The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Welcome back to another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. Thank you so much for listening. We are going to be switching things up just a little bit today. We're going to talk about beer, obviously, but right now the big focus is going to be on RTDs, ready-to-drink cocktails, and these are actual cocktails of some kind, and I'm sure that you've seen a lot of these at both your local liquor stores or even grocery stores in your area. They are definitely the hot commodity right now, having replaced seltzers as the newest craze in the craft beverage community. And one of the breweries that is in the state of Florida and has done a really good job of checking these out has been our friends at Daughters Brewing in St. Pete. They've been doing the RTD craft cocktail program there for a couple of years now and have recently sort of redesigned, redeveloped, and refocused the brand around Retro Chill, a series of now 4 different RTDs that are absolutely fantastic. Let me tell you something. They've got their Rocket Pop, they've got their Orange Creamsicle, they've got their Root Beer Float, which we are particularly big fans of. And then right as we did this interview, they had just released their Pineapple Whip. And I'm sure you know exactly what that is going to be looking like, tasting like. So we sat down with Corey Auger. He is the Director of Channel Sales and Brand Development for Daughters. Been there for quite some time, about not only why they decided to get into the RTD business, but just a good overview of some of the non-beer activities that Daughters had done and has been up to. Of course, we are going to finish with their newest year-round IPA. We do have to circle back because it is a brewery, but definitely wanted to make sure that you knew that that was coming up. That's going to be Vagabond, and you'll hear a little bit about that at the end. But Corey Auger, Director of Channel Sales and Brand Development at Daughters Brewing in St. Pete, talking about Retro Chill, their amazing line of RTDs. Enjoy. What's interesting is, especially if you take 5 seconds in the tap room, you take 5 seconds out here in the kind of outdoor area that you have, and you see the different varieties of beverages. Obviously, you are still listed as Daughters Brewing. It's on your shirt.
Yep.
But there's a lot in there that is not necessarily brewed. And
Correct.
You even kind of mentioned that in a lot of ways you're a beverage company.
Yes.
Does that surprise people?
I think it surprises people with just the wide range of selection that we have, but I think in terms of just where the current climate is with craft beer, that is kind of to be expected at this point, that people expect to see more out of a craft brewery than just beer. So I think just the breadth of variety that we have is surprising to people, but I don't think it becomes a huge surprise once we kind of talk about why we're doing it.
Yeah, and it seems that you've always, as a company, been able to sort of
respond to the market as the market kind of transitions itself. We're always either with it or maybe one step ahead of it.
Exactly. That's perfect. And I remember, I don't know, do you still do the seltzers anymore?
We stopped doing the seltzer because of the success of the RTD itself. That market kind of changed itself from the White Claw of the world to the Truly is now to more of the vodka base. We saw better success with it. And in terms of production, it was actually easier to do. We can turn it on quicker.
Really? Because I remember, it's funny, I've talked to people back when the seltzer craze, actually, I remember back when I first started going, and obviously Three Daughters was kind of around that time. The first major craze, and they even did that a little bit here, were the alcoholic sodas.
Yes.
Remember, hard root beer was everywhere.
Yep. Which is funny because now we have the hard root beer vodka soda. Again, it comes back around.
Weird full circle.
It comes back around, exactly.
And then obviously the seltzers sort of came, and there are still players there, but there are significant players.
Yeah.
Is it difficult while Three Daughters is very big, definitely a huge market footprint, especially in this side of the state, and then statewide, you're not producing enough here to completely cover Oregon.
Correct.
So is it difficult to decide how big and how much you want to jump into an arena?
It is, but I think the one thing about us is that we're very quick to adapt. If we need to go bigger, we can. We find space. We're cramming everything out of here we possibly can right now, but there's always room to grow. We always have, we could go 24/7 if we needed to, but we're always very quick to adapt. One thing we are looking at doing right now is taking the RTDs out of state eventually, but we're being very selective of where we go, and we're kind of being very cerebral in a sense of where we're going to take that and kind of planning ahead for that. But we've been able to really adapt to the market as it's changed and kind of grow with the market.
Now, with the ready to drink cocktails, which are, as you mentioned, sort of all over the place, I guess, looking at the market, how did that become the next big craze? How did that, I guess, supplant seltzers as the thing?
I think people in general saw one aspect of it is the health side of it, right? It was marketed as 100 calories, no sugar. It was vodka based. It's not malt based, so people were kind of turned off on the malt aspect of it for some reason. So I think that health demographic really played into it, and then I think it just became more flavorful and easier on the palate, and people could have a lot of them not feel full. Malt was very filling and made you feel full. So I think the vodka based of it really resonated with a lot of people, and I think that's kind of where that demographic shifted to. And then people started doing the iced tea versions, the lemonade versions, and that really took off because that was something new. It was different. It was exciting. So I think the demographic just really shifted with the craze of the health and all that, kind of created a perfect storm for that thing to happen.
And you sort of mentioned it a little bit, and I'm a little bit surprised that it's almost easier to make the RTD than it was to make the seltzers. You would think that the seltzers would be the easiest anyways. It's just water, sugar, and yeast, right?
Exactly. With the vodka, though, the vodka sodas at that point, all you're really doing is taking a vodka base and then essentially adding flavoring to that, or using whatever you need to as your base with the vodka mix, carbonating it, and you have a ready-to-drink cocktail.
Interesting. And I guess, obviously, there's a brewery. We're sitting next to gigantic fermentation tanks.
Stuff, yeah.
Where is the vodka being made? Where is that? And how difficult was it to take a beer license and, speaking to a lot of people, it's very different to do anything that is spirit-based.
Yeah, so the beauty with that, because we are not a distillery, we are a brewery with the licensing and things like that, we can actually source in and bring in vodka itself. We're basically bringing it by the drum, and then we can use that as our actual base. So it allows us to turn around these products a lot quicker.
Interesting. And then, of course, selling. You can't sell this at a grocery store in Florida.
You can.
You can sell the RTDs?
RTDs, yes, because it's under a certain ABV. It's only 4.8. A TCUP license, which is your off-premise license for beer and wine, it's considered an RTD at 4.8%. So you can actually sell that at a grocery store. So Publix, if you go to Publix right now, you'll see Surfside, you'll see RTDs, you'll see all that stuff on the shelf.
Interesting.
Same with the bar that doesn't have a liquor license. This allows them to sell some sort of RTD on premise.
Interesting. And I guess it's amazing because with an RTD, knowing that it is a cocktail, my assumption would be that the alcohol by volume would be significantly higher than a beer. Like if you were to put a can of Beach Blonde and a can of, Retro Chill, the root beer float that we talked about.
Technically can do, to your point, you can do a higher RTD ABV if you wanted to, and then it just takes you out of that bracket of selling it at a grocery store or selling it at a 2COP license. So there are other brands out there like Cutwater that do these at 13, 14%, and that has a home in the market. You just limit your audience at that point where they can actually obtain it.
And you made the conscious decision to not limit the audience and not limit the locations.
Yeah, we want drinkability here. The whole point of these things is drinkability, that, it's 99 calories, it's 0 sugar, so you can have a few of them. We don't want somebody having 4 18% cocktails And then all of a sudden they're not going to touch it ever again because the next day they felt horrible.
Gotcha.
So we want that drinkability factor to be a part of this as well too.
Interesting. And with the cocktails, with the ABV, we kind of dovetailed into beer just a little bit because you have sort of mentioned that there was a trend in the market, at least for beer, actual beer, of going lower in ABV. Because both you and I remember the days of the 22-ounce bombers, 15, 20%. Let's, put it in our car as gasoline if we can't finish the bottle. And it's definitely not where things are anymore.
No, it's definitely shifted to a lighter crowd, somebody that's looking for repeatability, drinkability, things like that. So I think that audience has kind of shifted. There's still outliers to that market, right? There are people out there still chasing the haze craze and doing those sort of things. But I think in general, it's becomes, people are looking at ABV. They're looking at how many they can have in a night. They maybe don't want to imbibe too much. They want to just enjoy a couple and that's it.
And that's really where the decision behind what you're doing with the RTDs came in with the little...
It gives us another outlet to, in case that beer drinker doesn't want that for whatever reason, we have another outlet for them to enjoy a beverage that we make here.
Awesome. And so how was the process started? Because I know obviously the current brand, the Retro Chill, was not the brand that it was originally when it was introduced. How did that, who made the decision like, look, this is the next big thing?
So it was kind of born out of the tasting room. It was something that we had on tap here that we put on tap kind of just as an alternative to the seltzer to see, we were playing around with some concepts and ideas, what would work in a vodka-based cocktail like that. The orange creamsicle was the first one, and we had a couple of distributor partners here for an event. They started drinking it, really loving it, and they basically said, hey, you might have something here that could be something. We started going down that road, exploring it. It kind of took on a few different iterations before it fully became Retro Chill. And then that lineup was really born based on nostalgia and creating, if you look at that RTD space and that vodka space right now, a lot of them are a vodka and a flavoring. So it's usually like a fruit of choice, strawberry, watermelon, raspberry, something like that. There's not a lot of interesting flavor combinations out there.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very much, here's the fruit and whatever.
It's very much what the seltzer was, like to your point earlier. They basically took the seltzer, but then put vodka instead, right? Not a lot of creativity behind it.
Exactly.
So with these, it allowed us to really branch out and create some creative flavors that, again, nostalgia is always going to be a big thing. People love going back to where they came from.
It's very soda fountain.
Yes, it's very soda fountain kind of soda jerk type thing. So a lot of people love that idea behind it. So Orange Creamsicle came on, took a huge hit. Everybody loved it. Then we came out with Rocky Pop, which did really well too. And then when the root beer float came out, that's when everything kind of came full speed ahead for us. And that's when it really took off as those big three flavors.
I was going to say, did root beer float come out and then Retro Chill was sort of, this is something, we have something.
So it really started with the two with Rocky Pop and Orange Creamsicle. That's where the Retro Chill name really. But then when we did that, we knew we needed a third flavor. And we had some in the background that we wanted to do, and that the whole retro concepts kind of became full circle when the root beer came out, and then everything kind of hit at that point. And then that's been about a year now, and then we just coming out with Pineapple Whip now. And then when we started doing that, we realized now we have 4 flavors. So that opens us up to variety packs, which is kind of the big market for these RTDs right now. People are really buying these by an 8-pack. They don't want the 4-pack.
Okay, so they don't want a single flavor, a bunch of single flavors. They're looking for a bunch of little ones.
Yeah, and this is, you look at who's drinking this and demographic, it really comes down to an occasional drinker type thing. They're doing it for the boat. They're doing it for the pool, the beach. They're sharing with friends. They don't want to have 4 of these themselves. They want to share these with the crowd, with their buddies and stuff like that. So that's really the 8-pack comes into play. And that's where you're seeing this market go, is that kind of variety pack.
Okay. And obviously I'm looking at the 8-packs that you got the display on, right? Where I would assume that once that was released, it kind of flew off the shelves.
So that is actually just hitting the market this week.
Oh, so it's not on shelves
your
yet?
timing is impeccable.
Awesome.
So that is just coming out this week. Those are all hand packed here by us. So that is a huge thing for us that's coming out now. We have a lot of big retailers buying into it. So we're really excited to see what that does in the market. So pineapple and that are brand new for us.
Nice. How is the pineapple? Of the flavors, I still have not tried it yet.
We'll make sure you have it right here. It's probably the best flavor we've done, honestly.
Really?
Yeah. So it's
big
nice
words.
and light, refreshing. It really hits. Not to name names of a big, entertainment complex in the middle of the state.
Everybody kind of knows.
Yep, everybody kind of knows. We had to start to name a little bit. But yeah, it's exciting for us. And people see that on the board as available. People get really excited for it.
Interesting. That's cool. Are there any flavors that are just sort of here, sort of being tested? Because I remember the last time that we've been here, and mind you, it's been a little while.
Yep.
There were some flavors of this that were not necessarily under the Retro Chill name, but were sort of being tested. Is that something? The way that beer always went, you try it in the tap room for a long time.
It's interesting when we look at, the nostalgia flavor. It's how many of these can we do that still, resonate with people? That's not just, again, not just a cherry flavor, not just a strawberry flavor. It's something more. So we played around with like a Shirley Temple. We played around with the banana split and things like that. I don't know if it's going to resonate as much as the four do right now, but we're always looking for the next thing. We're always playing around different ideas and stuff like that. So we're always retooling and kind of seeing what we could do on the fly. Something we'll probably look at over the next year as this variety pack comes out and we kind of get more feedback from people, what they love, what they don't love. And we're always looking at sales and velocity to see what exactly is selling in the market, not selling in the market. So we can kind of go back to the drawing board if we need to.
Gotcha. It also seems to be a fertile ground for cocktail canned versions of actual drinks, because I know you mentioned Cutwater. The first can that I can think of was their Moscow Mule.
Yeah.
Is that something that has been discussed? Hey, let's look at the mint julep. Let's look at
it's something we've talked about in passing here, but I don't think it's something we're looking to dive into quite yet, because again, we are a brewery, we're not a distillery. So then you start going into those concepts. You have to start looking at different spirits. How do you get those spirits in here? Does it make sense cost-wise, where we're going to keep it, how we're going to move it around and stuff like that. So I don't think that's something we're getting ready to dive into just yet, but it's something we have in our back of our minds in the future if we need to do something like that.
Gotcha. Now, you had also mentioned vodka lemonade, vodka iced tea, vodka combined with a particular golfer's name.
Sure.
And you do have those.
We did for a minute.
Okay.
So again, we're going to try things here and see if it works, right? So we went back about a year ago to do that brand. We called it Floating Dock.
Which is interesting because it wasn't Retro Chill. It had
we wanted to keep it separate, right? So it wasn't based on nostalgia. So we're going at a different market, different demographic with that. So we called it Floating Dock. We kind of quickly realized about 2 months in that we were playing in a very crowded space that was already well established, that had a lot of marketing behind it. As much as we wanted to keep pushing it, we shifted our focus back to Retro Chill, because it was something that was different, that stood out in the market. So we didn't want to waste our efforts pushing something that was not going to really give us the results we were looking for. So we kind of stepped away from that pretty quickly.
That makes perfect sense. But you still have a number of other products that are, tasting room only. It's stuff that you like to do here, like the energy drinks, which I am a big fan of.
Absolutely.
And that is something that is just here for the tap room.
Yeah, we still do a lot of things out of here. You touched upon the Men in the Making, which is a fruit punch that we donate to the Pinellas School System. We have the energy drinks that we're working with the fire department and the police department on as well, too. We do dabble with THC a little bit. You saw it in the cooler back there.
That's going to be interesting come November when it becomes illegal.
Yeah,
statewide.
We went into it with wide eyes and we were really excited about it, but we also quickly realized again, too, that it was a very mature market outside of the state. That we probably weren't fully aware of when we first got into it. We kind of quickly learned, and there's a lot of pivoting we had to do with that. So we really, as much as we love the brand, we're going to keep pushing it until November. We're kind of waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, and I was going to say that has to be its own, because obviously with beer, that's one license. Wine and ciders,
there's one license.
There's a different license. The spirits are completely different,
different.
What do you have to do for THC?
THC goes under the farmer's bill, so it's a whole different thing that's involved in. That again, we played around with it, we conceptualized it, we did it. It tasted good. It hit the mark for us, but we realized that we were playing again in a very crowded space. That it was where we're going to put our efforts. Right, when you start doing 5 to 6 different brands, you kind of have to prioritize which ones get your efforts and your focus. So we're still pushing it. We still love the brand, but again, it's kind of a wait and see process right now.
No, that makes perfect sense. But obviously you are still a brewery.
Oh, yes, with all things we've talked about, we're still a brewery.
And I was going to say, you'll never really step away from the beer.
No, we're still a brewery. About a year and a half ago, we went through a complete brand refresh. We really went back to the drawing board with our beer selections and our labeling and all that kind of stuff. We cleaned up all the labeling, created a nice, concise brand image. We moved 2 of our core beers into 16-ounce 6-packs, which was the first time any brewery in the state has done that in mass distribution.
Yeah, I was going to say it's usually a 4-pack, a tall boys,
or it's a domestic play. You see a lot of domestic beers going to that format. As a craft brewery, and the thing is, we didn't want to raise price. When we were looking at it, we were kind of figuring out, how do we give more to the consumer without going up in price, right? You looked at beer in general, everything was going up in price. Everybody was inching toward that $14, $15 six-pack.
Yeah.
And we figured out if we needed to go there, we wanted to give more liquid to the consumer. So we moved Beach Blonde and at the time Florida Orange into a 16-ounce six-pack and kept pricing aggressive. And gave customers 33% more beer for their money. Nowadays, a lot of people are not getting more for their money. So we made a conscious effort here to give consumers more. And then this year we're introducing Vagabond, which is a new IPA, which will also be in that 16-ounce six-pack format. And it's done really well for us.
Awesome. Because I remember, let's go back to the days, the two big ones were Beach Blonde, which will which still keeps the lights on.
It keeps the lights on. It pays for the bills here. So that will never go away. That is still our flagship. So we'll have that forever.
But the other IPA was Circle Hook.
Yeah. So we had Circle Hook for a minute. Florida Orange was another one we had. And they were great brands. And they've been around for a while. And with that IPA space, it's funny when you look at the IPA space, because for a while had to be hazy. It had to be New England style. Mm-hmm. It had to be that, right? Last year we tried doing a hazy. It did well. But we kind of realized we're not that brewery. We're not with the hazy IPAs. You really want those to go out quick and come back. You don't want them to sit on shelves and stuff like that.
Correct.
So we wanted to switch focus to just a good old IPA. And we talk about people going to lagers. A lot of people now are looking just for an IPA that tastes like an IPA. That's clean, that's crisp, that's a nice ABV, that's refreshing. So that's kind of where Vagabond was born this year, was just creating a very good everyday IPA that you could drink and have a few of, and you're ready to go for the night.
That's awesome. And you just launched Coconut Porter.
So Coconut Porter was a fan favorite in the small batch series. And it was funny. We were looking last year of what could we do year round that we haven't done before? And I was like, let's do a porter. As crazy as that sounds in Florida, when it's 100 degrees outside, people still love drinking dark beer.
We've got the water profile for it, definitely.
Yeah, we have that profile, and coconut's still very Florida on brand. So we're like, you know what? Let's be crazy. Let's take it from the small batch and let's, grow it up a little bit and put it into we kept it in a 4-pack because nobody wants a six-pack of coconut porter. But we did it in a 4-pack, and we're getting a lot of good response from that. People love the idea of seeing a porter year-round.
Interesting. And obviously, since Retro Chill is such a big thing, is there any way to sort of bring everything full circle and do Retro Chill flavors that are sort of inspired by some of the beers that you have, or in some way, shape, or form?
So the funny thing is, we haven't done that with the beer side of things, but we're looking at playing around for next year with, different, we've never done a sour here. We've never done things like that.
Really?
Not in full distribution like that. So we're always looking at new ways of playing with things, and there are some flavor profiles there that we could pull from. With that, and we've done it for, different events on the cider side of things. We've done an orange creamsicle cider. We've done, a rocket pop style of cider. So there's different ways to play with those flavor profiles if we choose to. But again, everything's kind of open right now as we kind of go into 2027 and what we're planning with.
That'll be interesting to see, because, that's another market, another style that has gone through a lot of changes, which has been nice.
Yes.
But it's been nice to see Retro Chill being as accepted as it is. It's been nice to see it as far-reaching as it is. And it seems like, especially by us, Retro Chill is easy to find on the shelves.
Yeah. The funny thing of the Retro Chill, we haven't had as much buy-in when you start looking at major chains, right? Like huge chains, as you would expect. We've had ABC has been a huge supporter of us with that brand. There's been a few other smaller ones, but we've done a lot of the growth with this brand organically. Which has been great because it just proves concept to us that once we do go bigger, it's going to resonate. We started selling it online out of state through a company that can ship out of state to California and Pennsylvania and Ohio. There's a few states we can actually ship to. So we've done that to pretty good success as well. That was the first time for us doing that, which again is just proving the concept that if we do take this further than Florida, it's going to resonate. So we're kind of proving those concepts as we push along here with this.
That's amazing. I am definitely excited and always happy, and in a weird sort of way, a little proud whenever I see it on the shelves. So thank you so much. I am excited to try the pineapple.
Yeah, we'll definitely get you some, and I appreciate the time.
All right, so that is it for our friends at Three Daughters Brewing in St. Pete. Thank you so much to all of them for their hospitality and their information. Next episode, we're going to be staying in St. Pete. We're going to head downtown to Central, so definitely do not want to miss that. If you want information on when that episode is coming out, the best thing to do is to follow us on our socials. We are on TikTok, as long as the videos that I post do not violate the community guidelines, which tends to happen to me quite a bit. I would love to know why or how. I don't know. But they don't violate on Instagram or Threads or YouTube or Facebook. We're on all of those. Just search for Florida Beer Blog. You'll find us immediately. If you want to search for the podcast itself, just log on to your favorite podcasting app. We're on pretty much all of them. Apple and Spotify and YouTube, like I mentioned. If you have a podcasting app that you prefer, we're on there. Very easy. Just search for the Florida Beer Podcast. And while you're on there, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you can leave a review, please do that as well. Definitely helps us get the word out. Definitely very important. And we would love for you to do that. If you want to reach out to us, we are at floridabeerblog@gmail.com. Obviously, we have our website, floridabeerpodcast.com, part of floridabeerblog.com. And if you look at all of that, you'll see that we are proudly maintained by the good folks at Flintstone Media. If you have a podcast idea that you want to get off the ground, whether it be for your own personal activities or for your business, the people at Flintstone Media are the best people to go to. They are going to be able to take your ideas and turn it into something that sounds fantastic. You can find them at flintstonemedia.com. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer is Steve Picala. Executive producer for Flintstone Media and Grand High Poobah is Jemmy Lagana. This is David Butler, your host and author. We will see you next week on Central and St. Pete. In the meantime, drink Florida Craft.